Ronnie, thanks. First off, appreciate it very much. We're here at TMX, Killen's TMX. Where does this rank on your list of accomplishments? I know you've been a busy guy and you're opening up a lot of new places. So where does this rank?
Well, TMX is probably the restaurant that I put the most thought into, the most research. I wanted the restaurant to, when you came into it, to go, wow, I see the stars. That reminds me of Mexico City, and I see the hearts, and I see things that remind me of different parts of Mexico. So for us, it was just something that, I wanted, when people walked in here, as far as even the music or whatever, that people go, hey, they feel like they're in Mexico.
Yeah.
Because that was important to create that mood, but we're known for steak and meats and stuff like that. So to do what we did here, and it's still evolving in a way, because we have to give people Tex-Mex food, and we have to give people what we're about. And it's like we're slowly introducing and educating our guests on what we are, and then we can change the menu a little bit once they trust us, if that makes sense.
Is there a way Tex-Mex is done typically that you needed to just get away from with this place?
Well, I look at Tex-Mex, and in the Pearland area, there were 31 Tex-Mex restaurants around the area, from Dixie Farm Road to up 521. So it's like, why would I want to do something like everybody else? So it's like, if we're going to do something, I'm going to really study it. I'm going to make sure that what we're doing is true to my heart and what I feel it should be, but also study, learn as much as I can, and make it where we're putting our spin on what regional Mexican cuisine is.
None of this is an accident for you when you come up with a dish. You mentioned when we talk, you mentioned studying,
right,
learning,
right,
that research to come up with these flavors of these dishes.
Well, I mean, I think that is just who I am. I don't want to just put something out, and really any restaurant that I have, just to put it out. There's the culture, in Mexican cuisine, it's all about the corn. So it's like, how can we take corn and do it the right way, rather than buying it, as far as masa, because corn is the base. You have, your chips, you have tortillas, you have masa, you have desserts that are made out of corn, and that's the base. And so if you understand the base, that's your derivative for everything else. It's just like in French cooking, it's all about the sauce. I'm sorry, the stocks, which stocks turn into sauce, and the mother sauces and everything builds off of that. So, you have to, I tell people all the time, in a steakhouse, you have to have good French onion soup, because if you can take the onions and extract the starch, and which turns into sugar in a very slow process rather than rush it, it's going to be nice and sweet instead of bitter. Because if you take an onion and saute it really quickly, it becomes bitter, and you didn't extract the starch out of the onion to make it sweet. So it's like there's a technique in all that, and applying those techniques to what we do here is just kind of like who I am and what we want to be. And we may not be some people, it's not what they think we're going to be. They come in and it's like, well, I thought it was Tex-Mex. Well, we didn't want to be Tex-Mex.
Well, and everybody's definition of a cuisine may be different
exactly.
Too, right?
And expectations or stuff like that. But, we just try to put out, this had a huge walk-in freezer, walk-in cooler, and as soon as we came in, we have no freezers. So we have a small case freezer for ice cream, which we have a couple of ice creams, but, it's just, that's who we are. It's all about the fresh ingredients, products, taking care of them, and keeping it minimal.
Now, this all begins with you cooking at 8 years old. This is your first memory of cooking at 8? Who taught you how to cook? What are some of those early memories in the kitchen?
Well, for me, it was kind of like when I would see my grandmother and my godmother and just our culture when I was a kid, the food, it was all about food. Anytime, there would be a big gathering, it was all about cooking. So I just saw that, my grandmother, my mother, my aunt, how much they really enjoyed cooking, and you could tell by the smiles on people's faces and how when food was served, it was very quiet because people were eating because the food was so good. And just to me, that, I think that everybody has a love language and what makes them happy or what shows love to them. Now for me, it's about giving somebody a plate of food or making something for somebody that they really enjoy, and you can tell by making them happy with smiles on their faces and stuff like that. And to me, I think that that's what it's all about. I mean, I've had a lot of chefs and up and coming chefs ask me about the key to success, and I think, you know what, if you cook good food and you cook from the heart and you know that you're happy with it and you make people happy, that's what it's all about. And if you take care of all those steps, everything else comes. Because we've opened up a lot of restaurants recently. It took me almost 10 years before I opened my second restaurant. And then all of a sudden in the past 5 years, we've opened 4 more. So it's just about people understanding our culture and harvesting it from internal to make other restaurants and to be able to get people to see our vision, if that makes sense.
And how are you able, I mean, because quality is important.
Right.
So there is a point maybe where you get spread too thin, right? Well, so how do you balance, like, how much to grow?
And that's the key too. But when we have the people that we have, it's all about surrounding yourself with good people, taking care of them, where it's just internal. I mean, I've got cooks that have been with me since day one, and to me, it's treating them, as like I like to be treated, and I just think that that's important to be able to grow. But I just found it's like, okay, we have the opportunity, we have good people, if we can grow and not stretch them too thin and everything, it's like, why not? My mother asked me too.
You got to find people that have that same passion you do, right?
Right. And in the industry, I mean, there's a lot of people that are here that have that passion and want, I want to find people that want to open their own restaurants, and I want to teach them, and I want to show them what we do here and how we do it. I mean, and I think that's why a lot of restaurants and everything, I think that they fail, because in the restaurant industry, it's very difficult to understand that. And also, I remember when I first started out in the restaurants, there were people that would take all their invoices, put them together, put them in an envelope, give them to a CPA at the end of the month, and 2 weeks later you would have an idea of where you were at. See, our systems that we have now, I mean, we know everything. I can make a couple clicks on the computer, tell exactly where I'm at, so I can adjust if I need to cut labor, or I learned a lot. I mean, I used to work for Mr. Fertitta, so it's like he taught me so much about the bottom line and the business side of it that I didn't know before. And I think that that's important, because you have to, now it's like, I cook and I'm technically a chef, but my hat's different. I'm more of a restaurateur now, or a real estate person that has restaurants on their real estate, if that makes sense.
Sure. Do you miss the cooking part? How much of it is business and how much is cooking these days?
I cooked at home last night. So it's like, cooking and stuff, I still cook all the time.
Do you still get the same joy if you're cooking at home versus how you used to be?
Oh yeah, because my son and my daughter are very, very critical of my food. So it's like, I hear my son is like, well, Dad, you could have sauteed this a little more, or just the flavor profile.
Wow.
And hopefully that'll be something that he'll want to do, when he, gets older and stuff like that. I mean, he's 16 now, but, kids have no filter, so they'll tell you exactly what they think, and which is fine, because, I like to listen to everybody, but, food.
Even the kids.
Yeah, I mean, being, food to me is all about balance. It's about, what you sense, salt, fat, acid, everything kind of goes in, around to come up with that perfect bite. And with us, smoky and spicy, that's what it's here. So.
What about for young kids? I mean, it's like, if you want to be a ball player, there's a team. If you want to be a dancer, there's a studio. What is a young chef? What do they do?
Well, I think that with the Food Network, the cooking channels, the cooking shows, and everything that they have now, people look at it, and cooking is not necessarily what you did because you couldn't find another job. Now it's like people look at it, it's not, you're almost looked. It's a good thing to be a chef and to understand what it's about. I mean, I've had people that go, well, I want to be a chef because I want to be a celebrity. I want to be a chef because I want to be famous. And it's like, you can't look at it that way. You have to look at it as like, I look at it as, I want to feed people and I want to make them happy. That with food, and that's what it's all about. And I think that if you do that, and take care of the product. Like all of our ingredients and products and everything that we use at all my restaurants is nothing but the best we can get our hands on. So it's like if you cook it correctly and you take care of the protein or whatever it may be, it's going to be good. It's up to you to mess it up. Be either overcooking it, not taking care of it, not burning a clean fire. You know, barbecue is a byproduct, honestly, of burning a clean fire. If you burn a clean fire, take the ashes out of it, you know, those are things that make it great, you know. But if you have great product to start with, it's up to you to mess it up. And there's a lot of, you know, the people that don't understand that,
Sure.
you know. So we just try to you know, get our staff to understand that it's about the product.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, it comes directly from you. I want to ask you, what's maybe one piece of advice then for the average person cooking at home to not mess it up? Is there one thing you tell? They say, "Hey, Ronnie, give me a tip. Give me a tip for the kitchen."
Well, it depends on what you're cooking, but you know, I always think about if you have a good ingredient, not to mess it up would be smoke. You know, like if you're cooking in a steak. You know, I just cooked steaks the other day at my house, and I cook them on a cast iron skillet. You know, and I'll take a little bit of the fat from the steak, put it in the pan, render the fat out of it, and I'll actually cook the steak in its own fat. So in like the meat type fat and stuff like that, it's not going to smoke as much. So, you know, I tell people all the time, if you're cooking a steak at your house, get it going really hot. Once the fire alarm goes off, then you put the steak on, because that means it's going to be hot, because you're thinking about creating a Maillard reaction to the proteins and the crust and the texture, rather than taking something and put it in where it's steaming it, where you're developing heat from the pan over a period of time. Like we do lobster here, and lobster's got to be really super, super hot, because you want the crispy exterior. If you have that, it's going to make the interior be nice and tender and soft. But if you put it in the pan and then heat it up, it steams it and makes it chewy and tough. So it's just, you know, sautéing. Sautéing means to jump in the pan. So, you know.
So it's those techniques.
Yeah, I think
it's picking one thing and just focusing on that.
Yeah, I mean, you know, and you know, tender. You know, I tell people all the time, let your steak rest. If you ever think about when you're cooking a steak or cooking any type of beef, if you cut it and there's a big puddle of juice in the plate, that means you didn't let it rest. Because if you let it rest, you want the juices and everything of the steak or the protein to go to the outer edges by letting it rest, rather than being in the center. You cut it, and you want the steak, you know, you want the juice in the bite of whatever it is, rather than on the plate.
That's a great tip. I love that. What do you think is the most versatile ingredient out there? The thing you keep going back to all the time for various dishes?
To me, I think being that we do a lot of beef and stuff like that, I think that salt is the key. I mean, it's simple, but you know, salt, pepper, butter. Those are my things that I always have in my house, and I always have fresh butter. But you know, simple salt.
I think of butter, we think of French cooking, think of your background. I find it fascinating from an identity standpoint that everybody thinks of you with barbecue, and then I go and I read about you and come to find out that you have this background of French cooking and these exquisite restaurants. A little bit of an identity crisis in a way.
Well, I mean, it's funny with the barbecue place, my very first restaurant that opened up in 1991 was just actually probably a mile from this place right here, was just Texas food. You know, we did chicken fried steaks, we did barbecue, we did, you know, burgers and stuff like that. But to me, I just knew that there was always something better for me in understanding food. I understood it then, it's just not to the degree. Like as an artist, I had maybe 8 colors, and then when I went to culinary school, it gave me 100 colors to paint with. So it's like it just expanded, not necessarily taught me how to cook, but just gave me more understanding of what goes with what, and just flavor profiles and putting things together. So you know, it was very. I loved going to cooking school and knowing, you know. It really is funny. The people just think of me as a pitmaster, and I'm like going, no, I'm classically trained. I went to Le Cordon Bleu. I was certified executive chef through the American Culinary Federation and everything. But you know, to me, it's not about necessarily wearing a toque wearing a chef jacket or anything like that, because to me it's all about making people happy, rather than, you know, if you think about a toque, there's people that wear toques that don't even really know what it means to wear one, as far as the pleats in it, chef jackets and stuff like that. So I think that, you know, it doesn't really matter to me as far as, you know, wearing a Killen's Barbecue t-shirt or whatever. Right. It's like, it is what it is. At the end of the day, it's about making people happy with food. And if you look at it another way, then I don't necessarily, I'm not going to say I don't respect it. I respect it, but, you know, wearing a toque, doesn't everybody wears them. It's like a big deal. Do you have the credentials to wear that in a way, or understand what it's all about?
Did you ever feel like you had something to prove coming out of Pearland and being there among these other great chefs in a place like France?
Yeah, well, I mean, for me being in Pearland, I mean, you know, I kind of traveled all over before coming back to Pearland, but, you know, and it took a little while for the Houston people, the critics, to really respect what we did, because we were in Pearland. They didn't really hear about me. I had to build it, you know, and it took a little while. It took longer, but, you know, I was persistent. I remember when I talked to my staff the very first time when we opened the steakhouse, I told them, I go, look, I know it's going to be tough. I know it's going to be tough. You're not going to be doing what you think you're going to be doing as far as money. I go, just please stick with me. I know it's going to work. It's going to work. I've got an idea. And, you know, at that time I was in the running for the White House chef position back in 2005, right before I opened up. And I said, people's expectations of hearing that I was in the running for the White House chef position and coming to my restaurant, their expectation is going to be high. So it's like, I want to, you know, my dad was like, I don't know why you're putting linens on the tables and why you're doing this and why you're, you know, he didn't understand. And I said, well, Dad, I go, people can't just have mediocre food with casual service. I go, this is what we're going to do. And if it works, you know, it's going to take a little time to see if it's going to work. But if it does, I think it's going to be fine, because people are going to expect that. So that was important to me, just to set a standard of what we were going to do and stick with it, because sure, it would have been a lot easier to do something that was frozen, where, you know, or products that were not fresh, because, you know, fresh ingredients, it takes a little more time to make sure that everything is fresh all the time, because, you know, you have shelf life, you have to sell it, you have to do all these things to make sure that the person coming in is going to have a good experience with the food, because at the end of the day,
and a consistently good one.
Exactly.
You got to do it each and every day.
Exactly, and that's the part that is tough.
Do you have a favorite dish? Something you just love to eat? You could eat it every day almost?
I don't know. I mean, it's funny. I love fried chicken. I love chicken fried steak. You know,
classics.
Those are, and that's kind of like what, you know, I didn't really learn how to cook those when I was in Europe, but, you know, that's the comfort food. That's the things that my grandmother cooked for me. I mean, I remember Sunday at 12 o'clock, she had fried chicken ready to go, you know, every Sunday at 12 o'clock. So it's like simple little things like that are executed perfect. Those are the things that make me happy, if that makes sense.
So to your point then, it really doesn't matter if it's a French-trained chef or somebody, or grandma in the kitchen. Right. Really, the point is, does the person enjoying the food actually enjoy it? They get that smile. It's the experience. So any cook or any chef really can be a great chef if the person eating the meal is happy.
That's right. Because, you know, people say all the time, Dad, I'd hate to cook for you. And I was like, it's not about that at all. To me, if you put your heart into it, and it may not be my favorite thing, but I'm going to eat it, I'm going to respect it, and I'm happy because you cooked for me. It's not about, oh, I'm not going to critique it. I'm not going to go, oh, well, it needs this or that. What, you know, to me, it's about somebody doing something for you. See, a long time ago, it was all about, you know, when you cook for somebody, you know, it was just because, you know, you didn't have to go to the grocery store, get the groceries, come home, cook, clean up. That whole process is a long process, and somebody doing that for you, that just, I mean, how can you not love that? Even if it's not your favorite dish, but it's still, you didn't have to do it. Yeah. And that's where I think that, you know, what cooking and everything is all about. Yeah. You know?
Is it for you an art or a science, or both?
I'd say both. Yeah. I mean, because there's, you know, when you get into baking, I mean, my pastry chef, I mean, you know, she made Princess Di's wedding cake. So understanding, you know, the whole science of that part of it, I mean, I can do it very well, but it's not necessarily in my heart, if that makes sense.
Baking and cooking are different, aren't they?
Yeah, it's different because I mean, cooking is not so precise. I mean, baking is very precise. I mean, it's, you know, where you're weighing everything out to the gram, whatever. So it's very technical, and I enjoy that, and I can do it. You know, I can go and make a cake without a recipe and just make it. You know, and understanding how to make it. So, you know, being a pit master, I mean, I scored perfectly on the advanced pastry portion on the ACF test, on the Culinary Federation, the executive test. So, I mean, for a pit master to do that, that's like unheard of, because normally cuisine people are not necessarily good bakers. Right. But to do both, I mean, that's what you know, my pastry chef that taught me, she's like, Ron, you need to be a pastry chef. And I was like, she said, you can hear things in the kitchen and go, it's ready. Because I can tell by the way the machine is binding and everything is coming together. But
so you have like an instinct about this.
Oh yeah,
stuff.
You have to. I mean, I think that's very important to managing kitchens, because you can hear what's going on, you can see what's going on, you can smell what's going on. And it's funny because I have this crazy sense of smell. Sometimes I wish I didn't have it, but you know, it's like I can come in, it's like, okay, I smell, there's a gas line, there's a little crack somewhere that you can smell something, and just, you know, but I think that, you know, that's the first, you know, sense of smell is sight, smell. It's a part of sense of when you're eating. So it's like, it's very important to create that you know, something that smells good, if that makes sense.
It does, and it all connects to the taste buds too. Absolutely. So I guess my last thing I'd ask you, you know, we think of you as the chef. You know, you talk about preparing steaks at home for the kids. Do you ever just hit the drive-through? Do you ever just get, man, it's late, I'm like, just give me a Whataburger or something?
Well, it's funny that you say that, because Whataburger was probably the last one that I had. I was coming back from the Woodlands and I was so hungry, and I was like, man, I didn't eat. I can't. You know, people go, well, why didn't you eat at your restaurants? It's like, well, I would rather sell the stuff at my restaurant, but also if my cooks have been there for a long time, I don't want to go, you know, I don't want to order something or make them cook or whatever. So it's like, yeah, I would say Whataburger or Chick-fil-A. In the past couple of weeks, I've been to both.
The truth. And you did tell me back when you were studying, a poor cooking student.
Yeah, I would eat at McDonald's frequently in Victoria Station in London, just because, you know, I didn't really want to, you know, I cooked and I was around French cooking a lot when I was a student and stuff like that. And, you know, eating a regular cheeseburger or a Big Mac or whatever, I mean, I would. I mean, because I just, you know, it was inexpensive and it filled
got your calories and
filled,
keep it moving.
It filled the hole.
Well, and I guess you knew down the road you would be heading this way.
Oh yeah. So
how many restaurants now total?
I think I have 7 and 2 in NRG. So we have in section 109 and 129 for the stadium. We have 2 there, and then we have a Heights location opening up. Right. We have the Woodlands that just opened up about, let's see, today's Wednesday, 3 weeks ago today. Okay. We had our soft opening. So
what would the 8-year-old say if you went back in the time machine and showed up and went, hey, you're going to have 9 different establishments one day, kid. Keep cooking.
I just look at that and go, sometimes it's really hard to believe. But, you know, even my mother, she's like, Ronnie, she goes, when is enough going to be enough? And I'm like going, Mom, it's not about that for me. It's about giving something to somebody that is different and putting our spin on it, and, you know, just trying different things. It's not about money. It's not about, because I don't care about that. That's not what drives me. What drives me is making people happy with food. That's what it's all about.
Something next coming? I mean, I know the Heights restaurant. Is there a new cuisine? Is there something you want to step into? Some continent, some spice flavor you've never tried before that you want to explore next?
You know, my kids have asked me about Italian. They've asked me about pizza. They've asked me about several different things. But, you know, I look at it and see, you know, my dad always told me, he goes, Ronnie, the best restaurants or best things to open up is, you know, something that you have no competition at. So if there's nobody else doing what you're doing, that's what's going to make it special. So, you know, I have a couple of things, you know, that I'm thinking about and what's going on, but I haven't, you know, the comfort food coming, you know, with Heights. I mean, that's something that I grew up with, and, you know, I'm really excited about that because it's just good Southern comfort food that you eat it and just makes you all happy. And that's what food, you know, that's what we try to do in all our restaurants.
So whatever it is, we know that's your goal always.
That's my goal. I mean, it's about good product, taking care of it, the product, respecting the animal that gave its life for it.
Sure.
So, it's about respecting. So if we can take something and put our spin on it and people want it, we're gonna do it.
Well, I did say the drive-through question was the last one, but just something else just occurred to me, and I wanted to get your take, just in general, kind of on the Houston food community. How are the chefs with each other? How are you guys with each other? Are you guys supportive of each other?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's like a brotherhood. I mean, especially the barbecue, and it's everybody. If anybody comes to me and says, hey, do you have an idea, or can you help me, or I'd like to talk to you about it, it's like I'll sit there and tell them anything I know. I will send my systems that we have, where we have our monthly spreadsheets. Will tell you about invoices, because that's the hardest part for most cooks. They don't understand the business part of it. Mm-hmm. And because at the end of the day, you can have the best plate of food, but if you're losing money every time you serve it, you have to think about that. And that's where I think that I'm good at both. And as far as food, and also like I said, I mean, you have to make money at the end of the day.
Sure.
Because if you don't, but the chefs there, Chris Shepard, good friend of mine. We talk to each other all the time. It's just everybody. Tyson, there's Uchi. There's so many different people here that just are very supportive of everything that we do, because at the end of the day, it's about having a piece of pie and growing it and making Houston, more of a food city on a daily basis. And I talk to Chris all the time, and I go, Chris is the one that started back again, because if you look at the James Beard Awards, and he kind of started that, and you look at Hugo and Justin Yu and everybody that's here. We have a very good, there's so many diverse people here that have been everywhere that come back, and it just makes Houston great. It's a great city to be in as far as food, no doubt.
Thanks for your time, man. I really appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
It's awesome.